Hello there, great person, and welcome back to Let's Dive into Warhammer 40K. Today we are again in the Dark Eldar Part 2, and yeah, I hope we get some actual Dark Eldar lore this time, because last time it was like a bit of a recap of the fall of the Eldar, and I hope we get some perhaps weird, nasty stuff. Why not? It's a horror series a bit, and I like that. So let's hope we get some more horror. Before we start, remember to vote for the next faction. Like after this one, I will do orcs, and after that, will there be Tau or Tyranids first? And for the further plans after that, there will be Horus Hersey, and after that, we will go like with some polls wherever you want to go. Probably Mechanicus or whatever it's called first, and then we go on and on. And also, if you want to vote for the horror movie reaction I'm gonna do next, it's currently up on the channel as well, so check that out. And now we're gonna continue Luetin's video, which, yeah, it's a great video, and I can't wait to get more. And I like the video, of course, because he does a lot of work there. It's in the description as always, and also if you like this reaction and my thoughts, consider liking, subscribing, and following the channel. So, without further ado, let's get into this and have some fun.
Created a situation where the Eldar could no longer be reincarnated, and secondary to that, it's also important to note that it is clearly stated that Eldar gestation takes considerably longer than that of what are referred to as lesser races, be that other humanoids. For the Drukhari, for the Dark Eldar, traditional trueborn children are extremely rare and something of a status symbol in their society. In relation to this, descriptions of a longer gestation is not clarified any further. However, my speculation is that given the fact this description points towards the possibility of it being very difficult to conceive, it made me wonder if Eldar do not bear comparison to fictional worlds like Children of Men, Handmaid's Tale, where conception becomes very difficult as a species and children are valued extremely highly. Unlike those dystopian worlds, perhaps this was not some devastating biological change for the Eldar. Perhaps it was a naturally designed aspect of their race. Because
yeah, that would make sense, because I mean they do rebirths, so like they would just exponentially grow at one point, and they would just like flood the galaxy and everything else, which of course is not good. It's not good. It would like how do you manage that? So yeah, I think it's probably engineered that they can't, or that they hardly can get children, because that would just probably starve them to death, you know?
Because we know that the Eldar were created by either careful design or some general shove in the right direction by the Old Ones in the earliest period for the galaxy. In the most ancient of times, it seems the case that the Eldar were able to just respawn in the warp. This could be a reason why they didn't need normal or effective means of conception, or perhaps it was even intentional to ensure that they didn't run rampant and become too big of a problem for the Old Ones, who, let's remember, didn't plan on being exterminated by the Necron and Catan.
I love how he says that they did not plan on being eradicated and horribly murdered. They just did not plan on that. I mean, it was a possibility for them. They were like, it's Sunday. Let's just end it. Let's get murdered by Stan. Why not? Like, that was, of course, not like why does he say that? It sounds so weird.
And when you think about this more, there is some
Necron,
sense to that. You design a powerful psychic race, but you want them to work for you, not against you. So you enable them to be continually reborn and walk out of the warp, but you don't want them procreating constantly, as this could create some problems for you. Later, when the Old Ones are destroyed and the warp is cut off, that low conception rate becomes a far bigger problem. Still, this time for the Eldar is so shrouded, it's very difficult to make solid conclusions, and I'll expand on that further separately. What we do know is that for Eldar conception, it's difficult and it takes a long time, so they cannot easily replenish their race.
Yeah, did they like procreate by like intercourse? I mean, probably not, because then the Slaanesh births would have also like flooded their race with new babies. I guess. Like, if they're drunk and doing it, why would they think of contraceptions? Not very likely. So I think it's probably like, yeah, they are probably, perhaps new ones are created if enough people wish for it. I know that I mean, they have these 3D printing wish devices that are very advanced. Perhaps that's how they procreated. Weird. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
On top of that, there are other issues because the fall allowed them the realization that if any Eldar died, their soul would be consumed by Slaanesh. But for the Dark Eldar, it was much more than that. They realized their souls were also being drained very slowly by Slaanesh because of the Eldari intrinsic connection to the warp itself. And they found that it was...
Okay. That's interesting. Like, is Slaanesh draining them through their proclivity to do the things that birthed her or him or it? Because that would make sense. Like, there's a part of these kinds of feelings in everyone. Like, there's the like or the like seeds of war are in everyone, seeds of conflict, seeds of lust, perhaps, or whatever. Like all these gods, there are seeds in every soul for those gods, I guess. So perhaps Slaanesh is in everyone always, and that's why she can or he can drain them. Like that might be
leeching their soul energy, if you will. And this is where the soul stones or the spirit stones come in. You see, Craftworld Eldar do not seem to suffer this same soul drain effect that the Dark Eldar do, but they do wear spirit stones that protect their soul. The idea being that should they die, it will capture their soul into the spirit stone, and this can then be placed within the Infinity Circuit on an Eldar Craftworld, which...
What is an Infinity Circuit? Like, he's probably going to tell me, so I know he's going to tell me. I just want to... That sounds cool. I want to give my own thoughts on that, like, what might that be, an Infinity Circuit? I guess that perhaps that they do Matrix style, that they incorporate them into their network, and then they will, like, have better computers or whatever. And how are they created, those soul stones? Like, are they created from the warp as well? And also, why does this person have this weird, like, is that part of their body? Is that a piece of clothing? Looks like both. Weird. I don't know. Whatever.
It's assumed is basically like a self-contained pre-fall warp space of a sort. It's an artificial place where the souls of dead Eldar are placed to coalesce and remain safe from the darkness of the warp and Slaanesh.
Okay, so it was like less functional. It's just their artificial heaven that they basically created because their real heaven became hell and worse. That's actually pretty badass that they just can create their own heaven. I mean, why would they not all then like take a big ship that has a good AI, put everyone in these soul stone things and just send off the ship to I don't know where and live in your eternal happiness or paradise? Or perhaps it's not happiness that they have there in the soul stones and in this infinity circuit. Perhaps it cannot. Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps it has a limit. I don't know. Or perhaps they don't want to give away their normal bodies as a race. I don't know.
And this is obviously an overview. There's more detail to all of these elements. Now, another reason why Craftworld Eldar may be cautious about bearing children is that any Eldar, including trueborn Eldar, will need a new spirit stone to protect them from Slaanesh. And spirit stones cannot be just fashioned, nor can they be repurposed. They can only be found on one of the Crone worlds. These are ancient Eldar planets which now reside either in the Warp or the Eye of Terror. So gathering spirit stones is not only extremely difficult, it's also incredibly dangerous. And
how are they formed then? Like, they seem to be a natural resource, kind of, though they are, like, all of them are at their home world, so to speak, like the worlds they originated from. So that makes me wonder, were they a product of Eldar tech, or were they a product of Slaanesh's birth? Like, were they the, what would you say? I don't know what it's called. Like, when you smith something, then there's this stuff that you, like, cast aside when you create a sword. And let's say Slaanesh was created and there was this stuff that got left over and crystallized into these balls. Like, somehow, like, warp structure crystallized into these stones. And that's why they are all in the worlds that were influenced by Slaanesh's birth, perhaps? Or is it more like what I said, that was just one of their technologies they had before? But yeah, perhaps they were just like meant for holidays, and then they had to repurpose them to be afterlives. I don't know.
Even though the Eldar will often use wraiths to achieve this, it's sometimes just more trouble than it's worth. So without readily available spirit stones,
there she is again.
Even at best very few, this isn't helpful to creating many new Eldar. And this is actually something very important to understand in relation to just Eldar in general, that they can't just have suddenly millions of new children, because it would be extremely perilous for those children were they to die without spirit stones. All this really comes down to understanding that Eldar souls are different to most mortal races, as I often say. They're more powerful, more enduring, and most importantly, they're less directly connected. They're seemingly able to detach from one mortal vessel and connect to another, and this appears to be very much by design, if their ancient myths and legends of the Eldar origins have any truth to them at all. But why am I talking so much about Craftworld Eldar?
Yeah, I wonder about that as well, because he's probably gonna explain how the Dark Eldar differ. But back to the soul stone things, like it also begs the question: how are new souls created? Are they thought up? Like is the warp influenced by 2 or more Eldar, and then the new Elder soul is there, or is it even impossible? Like, were they created with a certain amount by the old ones? Like they were like 3 trillion were created, and that's how many there are. And sometimes some get lost in the warp or wherever, and then they come back and it appears to be a natural birth or whatever. Like, that's so weird. Like, how are they really created?
Well, because context. You kind of need to understand that to understand Dark Eldar. The Drukhari suffer what is referred to as this soul drain or a spirit leech. This means that they're constantly bleeding their life force to Slaanesh, and this is one reason as to why the Dark Eldar are unable to use spirit stones as the Craftworld Eldar do, because this soul bleed seems to corrupt spirit stones. It blackens them, makes them unusable. Also, spirit stones are usually given to Eldar when they are very young, and it forms an extremely close connection to the Eldar soul. They become one and the same in many ways, so that the nanosecond their soul leaves the body, it enters the spirit stone. Most Dark Eldar are by this point very old, and to try and connect them with a Spirit Stone is not only extremely dangerous to them, but it's also very unlikely to be successful, so they just don't use Spirit Stones. But with that said, they do have other uses for them. For example, an Incubi, a warrior order of the Drukhari, whose sole goal is to kill as often as they can, it's said that they, as initiates, must kill a Craftworld aspect warrior in single combat, shatter their Spirit Stone, and return it to their hierarch.
Wow, okay. So that was a lot. So they don't have spirit stones. I mean, the reasoning was fine. Like, of course, if they are too old, fine. And I didn't get the soul bleed thing, because isn't the soul bleed affecting everyone? Like, it's not affecting them so much on the crafts worlds, of course, because they're like a bit detached from warp. But I don't know. Perhaps that's the only thing. Yeah, and then they have the incubi squads, which is, yeah, that already sounds Slaanesh-y, like incubus, succubus. That's probably Slaanesh stuff, I guess. Like, it sounds like her or him. So they have to shatter one of the stones and bring it back. And what are they gonna do with it then? Like, repair it, or use it for energy, or feed Slaanesh? Like, do they still worship, like, or what? I don't know if they still do it, but like at all, perhaps. Do they at all like worship Slaanesh, or like, because they thought, as far as I remember, that their way of living was good and not bad, and like, I don't know, weird.
When this task is completed, only then can they be fully inducted as an incubus. The Sundered Spirit Stone is rebuilt into a psychic torture device known as a Tormentor and mounted to the incubus chest, where it exudes an aura of terror and malice that penetrates the minds of even the most dauntless foes. Great. The bottom line is that for one reason and another, Dark Eldar do not use Spirit Stones. In fact, they have other means to return to life and not be captured by Slaanesh. This also feeds into the understanding that Eldar souls, like I say, not like human souls. They don't just fall like a drop of rain into an ocean. Eldar souls are much more stable and persistent and independent entities. They're almost like a permanent life force that's very difficult to extinguish and can be moved around. But before we go any further, what exactly is this soul leeching?
Yes, what is the soul leeching? Currently, by the way, I imagine an Eldar soul as like an excitation of a warp field. Like, that's how I would define it as a physicist. It sounds so much like an excitation state of a field, so that's it for me. Let's say warp is a field, and it's an excitation state of the warp field that's connected, of course, to reality by interactions.
Why does it appear to affect only the Drakari and not the craft world Eldar? Well, the answer is actually more complicated than you might think.
Okay,
and this unfortunately is another thing that is not especially clear. However, I did remember that there is some reference to this in an older text known as the Introspections Upon Perfection by Caesandrus the Anchorite, a craft-world Eldar, and it comes in 3 parts as follows. Life is to us as the maze of Linnæan was to Ulthanesh, its mysterious corridors leading to wondrous vistas and nightmarish encounters in equal measure. Each of us must walk the maze alone, treading in the footsteps of those that came before, but also forging new routes through the labyrinth of existence.
That really sounds, I'm sorry, this really sounds like the dreaming from Wheel of Time. Like, what's it called? Tel'aran'rhiod. A bit. Like, it's a cross between Tel'aran'rhiod and their stupid archway test. Like, it's not stupid, I love the test, but it's like, yeah, it sounds so much like that as well. Like, I like those ideas of paths in other worlds that are perhaps only meant metaphorically, but here it might as well be literally. Like, you know, it's so interesting.
In times past we were drawn to the darkest secrets and ran wild about the maze, seeking to experience all that it had to offer. As individuals and as a civilization, we lost our way and in doing so created the means for our doom, unfettered exploration leading to the darkness of the fall. In the emptiness that followed, a new way was revealed to us, the path. Through the wisdom of the path, we spend our lives exploring the meaning of existence, moving from one part of the maze to another with discipline and guidance so that we never become lost again. On the path, we experience the full potential of love and hate, joy and woe, lust and purity, filling our lives with experience and fulfillment but never succumbing to the shadows that lurk within our thoughts.
So they learn to control themselves. It's the path of self-control where they have these wrong emotions. Like, they're not wrong, it's stupid of me. Like, they have these emotions that can birth and feed the chaos gods, but they will control them and use them in a okay manner, and that's their new path they want to walk now. That's what I get from it. By the way, that dude's cool. Like his helmet. It looks a bit like the one guy from Made in Abyss, like the white pipe, that scientist Abek, you know?
But like all journeys, the path is different for each of us. Some wander for a long while in one place, some spread their travels wide and visit many places for a short time, while others remain for a long time to explore every nook and turn. Some of us lose our way and leave the path for a time or forever, and some of us find dead ends and become trapped. In the spring storms of youth, it is common amongst our people to question the validity and indeed sanity of our ways, most especially the pursuit of perfection in but one field of endeavour at a time, the path, as it has been called since our ancestors created it.
Okay.
While the young are intellectually capable of studying the tragic lessons of the fall and the great enemy unleashed by our ancestors, their view of the universe is too narrow to truly see the lessons intrinsic in the terrible events which destroyed our homeworlds and drove forth as survivors to wander the stars.
Okay. So it's a bit like the golden path from Dune, I guess. Is it? It is the path, like, yeah, it is a bit like that. It's the path they have to walk to survive. I guess, if I understand this correctly. Like, I would probably, like, the parts like this, I will have to read myself and think about them and read them once or twice so I really can dive into them, because, like, just hearing these very dense tellings is hard for me, you know, like to honor them, so to speak. But I will try to read as well. Like, we will find a way to read stuff. So
it is true of all that in youth there is great bravery and great foolishness in equal measure, an abiding belief that no obstacle is too great to overcome, no foe too mighty to defeat, no problem so complex that it cannot be solved. Conversely, it may be said that those who survive the galaxy's tumult for long enough come to believe that all obstacles, foes and problems may not be resolved, only allayed for a brief sliver of history, which in turn is but an instant in the slow dance of the universe. Thus it is that young and old clash incessantly over the necessity of the path. The young rail against the restrictions it imposes upon them, much as our forebears did. They wish to taste every sensation, every emotion within their newfound world as soon as possible. They do not fear the great enemy that was created by the desires of our ancestors.
They didn't know
their whole conception of her evil is gleaned from distant tales and legends, and that which brought fear in the nursery is spurned and ridiculed in adolescence.
By the way, okay, just thought of this. How many people have seen Slaanesh or her? I think they call her her, so I'm gonna call her her. I don't know. So of her influence and of her, like, have they seen parts of her, like her demons? How many have? How many have just heard it? Like how much has Slaanesh become a myth? I know there are demons running around, so like it's probably too many not a myth. And don't get me wrong, but might be that for some that are far off at the rims of the galaxy, perhaps, then it might be a myth and they get careless, perhaps, especially if they are young. Because he just said that there were many young as well in the Eldar that fled. So there might be many that are not aware of the danger completely, like how, what? And are the young reborn? Or are they really young, like new created? I still don't get that, so a lot of stuff to think about here.
Only with time can they begin to feel the terrible thirst which we gave her and begin to understand that she is a mirror image, a reflection of our worst excesses given life by the debauchery and depravity which preceded the fall. Long ago our race realised that the only way to elude the great enemy was to shatter the reflection, to live a life of denial and focus upon but one aspect of life, pursuing it unto perfection. That is anathema to the young, just as it is to the great enemy. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather the curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree.
Okay. First off, I really like the young versus old thing here, because that's true. Like many old people probably see or think, yeah, there's so much bad stuff or so many obstacles. There's some stuff you can't do anything against against mates, because that's life. And the young are like, yeah, we can tackle everything. Yeah, tackle everything. Poke Slaanesh, yay. I don't know. But so, like, focusing on just one thing, like, if that's last, wouldn't that empower Slaanesh? I don't get that. Or are they talking about logic? But before they talked about lust as well in one thing. Like, if you focus on one thing, won't you then aid a god of chaos? Or create a new one? You know what I mean? Like, that's a bit confusing.
Thus it is that so many take the path of wandering, or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood, and so the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people shrink from generation to generation.
Okay, I guess there are people that are... Yeah, okay.
The greatest truth about the path is the simplest to say and yet the hardest to comprehend. In this profound moment comes a realization of the genius of the Asuryan, and the flaw in their genius. There is only one path, and it binds us together. We seers may pick apart the strands until we reach the infinitesimally small details, but their presence is a distraction to the overall flow of the scheme.
Okay, so they use weavings and patterns as well here, like in Wheel of Time. This is very Wheel of Time, I like it.
Poet or dreamer or mourner, warrior, seer or outcast, as the events in your life are but threads in the cord of your fate, so your whole life is but a thread in the cord of the fate of the Eldar. We all walk the path as a single species, and as a collective we must learn to control our passions and our fears together, or face destruction from one and the same. Now that is quite a long meditative piece, but it gives us some critical information once you dissect it. In the foreword, this line which states, "On the path we experience the full potential, but never succumbing to the shadows that lurk within our thoughts." In the second piece, where it talks about many Eldar not truly understanding the nature of things until they experience it for themselves. Only with time can they begin to feel the terrible thirst which we gave her and begin to understand she's a mirror image, a reflection of our worst excesses given life by the debauchery and depravity which preceded the fall.
Yeah, I mean, that's self-explanatory, I think.
Long ago our race realised that the only way to elude the great enemy was to shatter the reflection, to live a life of denial and focus upon but one aspect of life, pursue it unto perfection. It then also mentions about how the tragedy of the fall plays out over and over, that their numbers shrink from generation to generation.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty, like, self-explanatory, what I said. Like, of course, it's gonna happen again and again. If they don't know what Slaanesh is, just from, like, legends, if they're so young, if that's just a tale to them, they've never seen demons, they will do the same mistakes. And as the Warp is already sick with Slaanesh, they will pretty easily probably attract her.
This also lends weight to my belief that the Eldar not only have low numbers of children, but those that they do have, even if they've got protected by soul stones, they are still corrupted by the thirst of Slaanesh initially. Perhaps for some of them this corrupts their soul stone, and if they become lost then to Slaanesh. But you also get the sense that they try to teach their young about the dangers of Slaanesh, but that no amount of study can prepare for them its true power and horror.
Yeah.
In the afterword, it finishes by underscoring the fact that as a single species, we all walk the path or face destruction one and the same.
Golden path.
So these three pieces by Cassandras give us some deep insight that in fact the Craftworld Eldar are not immune to the soul drain that the Dark Eldar suffer. This is something that actually affects all Eldar. It's just that the
No, I wouldn't agree here. That's not what he just told me. Like, that's what he gets from that. What I would like, yes, I understand where he's coming from. That might be true what he says, but it might also not be true. It might also be just Elder nature that will F them. Like, it doesn't have to be the drain, because the drain is what I think is the part of Slaanesh that is in all Elder by default, because they have the potential to do things that Slaanesh would like, you know, or what that would strengthen Slaanesh. So that's how I understood that. Perhaps I misunderstood that. Perhaps I did. So then he might be right completely. But as far as I understood, it was also like there are two problems. One is that parts of Slaanesh are in a reaction that could lead to her strengthening, and B is that if you don't know about her and have never seen her and might, if you're not reborn but newborn, and again, I don't understand that part completely, but like you don't even know if that's a real danger. It might just be the boogeyman that's, oh, that's real. You told me about this weird space god thing that eats us if we are having too much fun, but that was just like to no, but you just said that to prevent us from having fun. Why is it real? Oh no. And then they're all gone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that's more nuanced than he's telling us here, but perhaps he didn't have the time. And perhaps I'm wrong. You know, that's a possibility, of course. Like, he knows more than I do, so.
Craftworld Eldar's path of focus and discipline and not abject horror seems to steer them clearly away from this. However, for their younger children, they don't understand this until it's often too late, as described where it says, "Understand, she is a mirror image, a reflection of our worst excesses given life by the debauchery and depravity." What this suggests to me is that if you align yourself with the lifestyle of excess and ultimately perverse behaviour, which is in line with Slaanesh, then you stare into the mirror, into the darkness, and she'll bleed your soul into the warp.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect anyway. The Dark Eldar discovered this.
Yeah. That's what I said. It's exactly what I said. But why is that the bleeding? I thought perhaps I didn't understand the bleeding then. Perhaps he meant this by the bleeding.
Soul siphoning process soon after the fall. But far from avoiding it, they developed their own methods to deal with such problems, and that is to allow the siphon to function. But be they Drakari children or adult, instead of trying to stop this process, they just decided, hey, why not just continually fill up the vessel so it never runs dry? Simple. Except that in order to achieve this, a life of meditation, discipline, sobriety and abstinence are definitely not required aspects for the path of the Dark Eldar. Indeed, quite the opposite. Oh, and of course therein lies the prospect that should Aeneid be born, the Craftworld Eldar of the path may face a soul siphon of their own.
I don't get this part. What is he talking about? Like, we are suddenly with a Dark Eldar again and they fill the vessel up with Slaanesh stuff so they don't get corrupted by Slaanesh? What?
As I said at the start of the chapter, it's a theory/story that I'll have to get into another time.
Okay. That looks
so the
nasty.
Drakari discovered soon enough that through their extreme acts they were able to satisfy the thirst of Slaanesh that drained their very spirits. This is
what? So what? I'm sorry, what? So they are like, yeah, let's just do all the stuff that bursts. So they appease her. It's basically them appeasing her by giving her sacrifices of like they fuel her on, and it's like a contract. They fuel her and she's not killing them and eating them. Like, why would she? Because that strengthens her army and her power. She has living things that worship her, so to speak. Like, they don't actively worship her, but they do the stuff that fuels her, so they basically do worship her. So, yeah, why doesn't he explain it to me like that? Is that too basic? Like, am I missing a vital piece of information? Because to me, this really sounds like they're like, okay, so you're the goddess of lust and hunger and depravity. Let's do lust and hunger and depravity to fuel you so you don't kill us because you need us, kind of.
This is where Commorragh becomes the centre of their world and existence. Similarly to the craft world Eldar, the Dark Eldar have nowhere else to go. They become entirely focused on satisfying their ever-draining souls and their constant need to engage in decadent depravity.
Yeah.
The Dark Eldar had now become little more than sadistic parasites who subsist upon the anguish of others in order to prevent the slow death of their immortal souls.
No. I think that, yeah, perhaps it's in the lore, but I think there's more behind that. To me, this really sounds like SLAANESH is just like, yeah, I'm gonna let you live, so you fool me, you idiots. And you think you escape from me, but you are the ones that give me strength. Like, that's what I currently just understand from this. Perhaps in the lore it's directly stated that it's not that way, but to me it sounds like SLAANESH is just being a piece of bee and like using them.
10,000 years later, in the 41st millennium, SLAANESH'S thirst pulls at them still. There truly is no escape.
Yeah,
the Drukhari have unwittingly doomed themselves, exchanging a horrific but mercifully swift end for an eternity of ghoulish starvation. And this is how the Drukhari became raiders of mortal souls. Their appearance can change visibly dependent on how long it's been since they quenched the thirst that's constantly eating at their souls.
Yeah, yes, they are just slaves to SLAANESH. Like, I know they are probably not in lore. That's how I get the like, because that like Luetin currently talks to me like they're her slaves, but they are by proxy. They are like. They're so her slaves, like what? Of course they are. Like they're doing the stuff to satiate themselves. So she's like, okay, you've done enough for now. Tomorrow you will give me more. And the longer they get starved, like the more she like her influence like pulls at them and makes them like weak and corrupt and whatever. Like or like what reason would I have currently to not think that they are like indirectly per proxy slaves of SLAANESH?
Those who have not drank of the suffering of others will appear visibly gaunt, even by the standards of the already bone-thin Eldar. Their skin can seem dry and withered, their bodies more frail. For those who have drank of the torment of others will glow with an aura of perfection. Their skin cold but glistening with life, but not. They can appear like a shadow to some, for they are inside empty shells, and all they exist for is to fill that void. It's worth additionally noting, quite importantly, that the innate psychic abilities of their straight as an arrow brethren have deteriorated to a point beyond where they are now able to be used. To channel the energies of the warp and chaos really within Commorragh would be to invite disaster, and so the Dark Eldar do not use psychic powers.
I don't know, I think SLAANESH is not just like, what would be even better than having people just believe in me and be like containers for my essence? Have them not like attract other chaos gods? Yeah, that's a good idea. Like I would just make them not be like visibly connected to the warp anymore, just by doing my what I want. Like, she might have locked that away. It's so cool, but I'm probably completely wrong. And I probably am currently interpreting too much into this. And like, but in my head, that's what's happening. I don't know. Like, why would that not be happening? Like, what evidence is there against that? If you have it, please tell me in the comments, because I might miss some essential parts here. I have the feeling I'm either missing essential parts or SLAANESH is just a big troll.
Of course, this is somewhat problematic considering they exist within the webway, but we'll come to that. Although it is manufactured instead of psychically grown, the weaponry of the Dark Eldar is just as advanced as that used on Eldar Craftworld. In matters of war, the Dark Eldar are artisans. Their imagination and skill has led them down a sinister path. Their favourite tools of war include splinter weapons that can set every nerve aflame with pain, beams of darklight, whips that bleed acidic ichor, and eldritch soul traps.
What? It is so Slaanesh. It's like, Slaanesh just was like, yeah, develop weapons for me. Like, don't use psychic stuff, so you might not use them against me. Like, I feel, I don't know, I have to think about it, but all of those are like these typical Slaaneshi things, like this excess, this pain excess that they are like spreading Slaanesh through the weapons, I guess, as well. Like, it's so obvious.
Dark Eldar are so focused on the agony of others that their lightweight bodysuits even incorporate bladed plates, not only for protection, but also to give them yet another weapon to use upon their prey. The warriors of Khemora know each and every possible action by which they're able to kill others who inhabit the galaxy, and they delight in perfecting and refining their skills.
They delight. Again, like, I know it's probably, he just didn't state it that they're like Slaanesh'S guys, but they're like so Slaanesh'S guys, of course they are. So of course they have that, like, they want to delight because they want to fuel Slaanesh. They perhaps they don't even know it, but I think, yeah, I'm repeating myself, but yeah, Slaanesh is a troll.
The Drukhari have abandoned the material dimension long ago, and when they do emerge from their gated fortress city, it's only to prey upon their unwitting victims who truly have no concept of what horrors await them. They'll rarely dirty their tongues with the savage grunting languages of lesser races, but instead use translators where they must communicate. For the Dark Eldar, every aspect of their characters is pushed to the extreme, including their condescending arrogance. Drukhari cabals assault the feeble lesser races in piratical raids as they plunge down upon the worlds that they will harvest, with whole armies screaming from their warp portals into the midst of the foe aboard Baroque Grav craft before launching themselves to revel in the slaughter and, yes, literally bathing in the decadent sprays of arterial blood and explosively dismembered corpses littering the path of their passage.
Yeah. Glory to Slaanesh. Oh man, like, and he even says harvesting. What are they even harvesting? Yes, agony and stuff that will fuel Slaanesh. So great. Like the way it's written is brilliant, but perhaps I'm misunderstanding a lot here. If I really, like, I just have the feeling, like, since we started with the Dark Eldar today, like, I have the big feeling I'm misunderstanding something because, or perhaps he just didn't say it because it was too obvious.
For the Dark Eldar, the visual horrors they unleash are just as pleasing as the visibly clean tearing of a razored blade across soft flesh, or for that matter, whatever they choose. Okay. They relish casually breaking the bodies of their captives, but such crude and tedious pain only grants them mere momentary slivers of enjoyment. For the Drukhari prize even more highly the cruel crushing of their captive's spirit, for truly nothing is more gratifying to a Dark Eldar than securing utter dominion over one who has resisted them, which, as we talked about interestingly, aligns them very closely with Slaanesh.
Yes.
They will drink in every nuance of woe until their captives are left in a vegetableized state, barely able to dribble words out of their ruined orifices.
Okay, I didn't need to know that, but yeah, okay, so they're like Slaanesh's demons, but better because they're not bound to the warp. Like they are very, very much bound to the materium. So Slaanesh has two armies of like things. Like she has her demons probably, and she has the Dark Eldar, which is even worse. Oh god, yeah. They like to psychologically break stuff and mentally, like, psychological torture is probably in many cases worse than, I don't know which is worse, it's both horrible, so anyway.
Somehow it may be discerned as a request for death. How pitiful, how pathetic, how dare they have the sheer audacity to request such a thing. Except it's likely that even if this wish were granted, it will be yet another form of mental torture. As for many, this will not be the release they were wishing for, they will instead be brought before the foul Dark Eldar homunculi.
okay, we are gonna get, or I'm gonna get told what an homunculus is in Eldar lore, which is gonna be horrific, but it makes sense that they do the mental torture thing, because that's what fuels Slaanesh again.
The guardians of life and death who hold many an individual's fate in their distorted claws. For the many whose minds are already beyond the point of conscious awareness but still able to feel, they will be rent and reshaped into undying trophies or even grotesque items of jewellery, furniture or decoration. Many a homunculized layer features disturbing, moaning, nerve-inducted twitching of things and objects fashioned from the still living remains of their favourite victims.
Oh. So stupidly disgusting. I've written something like that as well once. Oh god. I'm glad I was not the only one who thought of stuff like that as eternal torture. Kinda. But it's so nasty. So horrible. Like, it's like the worst thing. I've once seen this short movie and I don't even know what it was. It was on YouTube. It was a horror movie. It was in a TV show. I don't remember. And it was like this woman and she like amputated her husband's limbs, and because he cheated on her, I think. Yeah, she amputated all his limbs and made him watch their wedding video where he promised her like happiness, and like he then closed his eyes and then she like cut away his eyelids, so he had to watch it all the time forever. That was, and I think she amputated, like cut off his tongue as well and stuff. Like that was so horrifying. And this is like that. It's like this, or this book. I've not read it. I want to read it. Like it's one of the books I want to read in my life. Yet it's I have no mouth and I must scream. It's like this horror story about this AI that turns people into blobs and tortures them eternally. And this yeah, sounds like that, like those ideas. Like it's like, God, so disgusting, so beyond disgusting. But anyway, let's go.
Other unfortunate captives that no longer have any use will be slowly rendered down like so much fat. Their final fate is to become imbibed as some description of an elixir or powerful narcotic destined for the monstrous beings who stole their so precious lives. And all of this is the most narrow snapshot of what takes place within the darkest recesses of Commorragh.
Great.
Commorragh is central to everything that is Dark Eldar. It was their salvation during the emergence of Slaanesh. It is now their whole world. Commorragh is the launch pad for the Drukhari. It is their hub city by which they reach out into real space to then drag their unwitting victims back to the darkened corners of hell. It's important to understand that when we talk about the webway being a series of tunnels linking one place to another, it's a common mistake to think of it simply as that corridor or tunnel connecting two places. But the webway is far more than this. The webway, similarly to the warp, appears to ignore dimensional rules and physics. The spaces inside of it can be absolutely vast, large enough to carry entire fleets of ships, indeed entire cities, and who knows, potentially even planetary-sized bodies. It could in theory contain an entire race in complete isolation from the rest of material space and the immaterium.
Oh, that would be cool if there was a race like that, then down the line they introduce it. But yeah, I imagine it a bit like the slipstream from what was that show with Captain Dylan Hunt, I think? Andromeda. I think it's called Andromeda. At least in Germany it was called like that. Perhaps it has another name, but that had the slipstream. It was like that.
It's tempting to think of the webway as another dimension itself, except that it is not. And that's important to remember, even though to all intents and purposes it does act like another dimension. But the webway is a constructed artificial pseudo-space that exists between the material realm and the warp. This is why it can be accessed from both and linked between these spaces. The other faction who dabble with dimensions are of course the Necron, but Lord knows I do not want to go off on a tangent right now and submit you guys to yet another physics lecture. Many sections of the web—
Why not? I love physics lectures. I can help you, mate. I can help you with physics lectures. Like with dimensions. You know what? I've just managed to watch 20 minutes, but I think I've already been recording for quite a long time, so I think I will stop this part here and we'll continue the next part, of course. So let's talk about dimensions in physics. Like it's basically there are just there are spatial dimensions, and they're like, I think depending on what theory you ascribe to. Like if you take string theory, it's 12. If you take loop quantum gravity, I think it's 6 or 8 spatial dimensions, which means that's hard to explain. But what you also have is theoretically like dimensions, not like, because all those dimensions in physics are like glued together, like they're all linked very, very, very strongly. Like in quantum physics, you have 4 spatial dimensions and they're all like very, very closely linked. And like some would say that 3D space is the shadow of the quantum world. And I think that's a pretty good metaphor. But they are very, very closely linked, and like these things like warp is also like another dimension like that, I feel. But you might also have other dimensions like that are like if you imagine the universe as a bubble and another bubble universe. You know, it's not like that, but if you imagine like that, those are like both 3-dimensional, but they're not connected, so you might say they are different dimensions, you know what I mean? So that's from a very, very short physics interlude here. And yeah, I wonder what he means with the Necron. What do they have? Like, I know they have stasis, but what physics travel things do they have? Like, how do they travel through space-time? I don't know. Yeah, it was horrific stuff. It was indeed very, very horrific stuff. So I might have to change my background picture to Slaanesh next time. What do you think? Should I like take away Nurgle here, good old Nurgler, and put in Slaanesh? Might do that. And we were gonna hear more about the terrible torture they have. So basically, all we had today was, and I know I was perhaps a bit too, perhaps I did have too much fun with the obvious. I thought it was not that obvious, but yeah, it seems that they are like that Slaanesh has 2 kinds of demons, and I mean that metaphorically. Like she has the literal demons, and she has the Jakari, which are flesh demons that are that are corrupted without being corrupted. You know what I mean? It's like they're like doing her deeds as well, but very cool stuff. Very interesting stuff. I like the Elder lore as well. That was badass. Like with the I don't get how the children creation and the rebirth. What is the difference? How does it work? But I'm sure perhaps we don't even know. I don't know. Yeah. So that's it for this video. And also some people said that it's a bit hard to follow all the videos. So I will probably do a video all 3 days only, so you can keep up and I won't like flood you with my crap, so to speak. And yeah, I've re-downloaded Dawn of War 2, which someone said is a good game. And there's like this the nun. I don't know what they're called. I forgot. You can play a nun, like, or you get more lore about it. And I will probably do a bit of a let's play there and upload it if you're interested. Like, would you be interested in something like that? Because they like someone told me in the comments that the storyline is pretty good, and if you know the lore, it's not surprising. But I don't know the lore that much, so it might be surprising to me. And yeah, yeah. So that's it for today from me. And as always, if you like these reactions, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing the videos to other fans, perhaps. Let other people know about the content. And of course, the most important thing, take care of yourself, and see you in the next video. Bye.